Finally, some notes on some of the agents that have been discussed in the literature. So Dong-Pyu Choi has extended Icarus in the past with respect to a goal nomination procedure. There's been work on describing how appraisal theory can be used in SOAR for goal prioritization. There's been work by Olivier Georgion in the context of sensory motor learning tasks and his enactive cognitive architecture. Bob Rowe and others have talked about Cogent, which supports a number of capabilities that are related to this, and also Stratus, which is using goal reasoning techniques in the context of autonomous cyber defense. A lot of the discussions amongst those who are looking at this have been in the context of where to place the goal reasoning activities. Do they place it in the planar, as Vikas Shankar has argued, or outside? And that's generated a lot of discussion. There's been an emphasis in this context of cognitive architectures on using meta-reasoning approaches at the language level for different purposes, and Mike and his group have developed an architecture called MIDCA, which separates out the goal reasoning activities so that it's very clear that they're being done from the meta-reasoning perspective. This also is a feature of the work by a number of people who are looking at design tasks. Okay, so I've taken you through most of this survey. Just at one point on user interaction, and that is I'm concerned about how this is expressed over here. So there's been, unfortunately, a relatively small number of people who've been looking at goal reasoning in the context of human-machine teams, but there have been some. The best work, perhaps, is the work by Baxter and Richards, in which they had already had, by 2010, a lot of experience with having an operator control a set of unmanned air vehicles, and how shared goals at multiple levels of abstraction can be used to good effect in their goal reasoning techniques. Ben Bangford, working with Mike Cox, looked at the topic of interactive knowledge acquisition, and in order to be able to resolve contextual ambiguities in the queries that they were looking at. Chris Guy has been looking at methods that in which collaboration and cooperation is taking place among a set of agents, and agents trying to identify how it can assist an initiator agent in that regard. We've instead been looking at the context of what we've been calling the autonomous squad member, in which an unmanned ground vehicle supporting a dismounted team with a set of surveillance tasks, in which the communication is done through natural language understanding as well as through direct communication with the robot. And the task that the system has is to recognize the plan of team members, as well as ensure that it's always in position to identify what it's doing in a clear way to its users. So this is the topic of transparency modeling. We've been working with Jesse Chen on that. A quick note about this. So it's critical for goal reasoning techniques because there's a lot going on to be clear as to what its derivation of reasoning and how to express that to the user. So Jesse's group has proposed a particular transparency model that they're using with respect to our system, and it's one in which she's trying to make some arguments as follows: that goal reasoning creates a different type of relationship between users and the agent, because humans have to predict how it will behave, identify the context in which it will succeed and fail, and if you don't do it right, it's going to lead to miscalibrated trust. And it's challenging here because there's a lot going on. So you can provide too much detail, and in doing so, that could overwhelm the user. You've got to identify the right amount of information that the user wants, and this may very well be in the context of real-time situations. So we're identifying some approaches in which this works and testing it now. Okay, so I've gone through most of that survey, and from going through these 51 or so papers that I mentioned taking place that have been published in these workshops, I've recognized some potential directions that need attention. Perhaps these will seem fairly easy to anticipate. In the 2013 survey that our group put together, we described 4 motivations for goal reasoning, and 2 of them seemed to really need additional attention. One was this notion of graceful degradation. If you've got a goal that can't be achieved, what do? Do you abandon it? What you need, perhaps, is a better understanding as to how different goals relate so that you can perhaps degrade that goal. Instead of submitting a full report, perhaps you can submit a draft, was the example that was put out. And this is an example of goal transformation. Mike Cox and others have looked at this topic, but but really it hasn't got enough attention. And goal transformation, in his framework, provides a means by which goals can be transformed from one to another, typically in the context in which the first goal cannot be achieved, but the transformed goals can be, or can be more easily. And this is just simply an understudied area right now. The second motivation was to improve future performance, such as with respect to anticipation. You'd like your agent to avoid states that jeopardize future goal achievement. And this may require modeling domain or providing model domain that allow you to do this or using learning techniques. As well as you'd like your system to be able to adapt over time, to accommodate users' evolving expectations, especially if this is in the context of long duration activities. This very well might push it in the direction of meta-reasoning, shared mental models with users, of course. There's been some related work, which I mentioned earlier, but there's been absolutely nothing on these types of long duration agents and the types of tasks that they've been supporting. It'd be a great dissertation topic. Some other topics that really deserve more attention, indeed, theories of attention. So goal reasoning researchers have begun to examine some of these, but they haven't contrasted and compared them at this time, and really haven't borrowed some from outside the community for use in this context to the degree to which we should be. There has been some work on using norms for expectation modeling, but not to the extent in which we should have at this point in time. There's a small number of people who have been pushing forward a workshop series on this topic, but we haven't had much interaction with them other than Philippe Beneguzzi, who's done some terrific work on agent-based approaches for goal reasoning. We haven't looked too much in the context of using opportunities to guide goal reformulation. And clearly we should take a hint from Schermerhorn and others for using counterfactuals and causal modeling approaches to do this, to recognize and perhaps pursue soft goal opportunities. With respect to affordances, some people have worked on this, but there has been a whole lot of work, and it really deserves more attention. Well, what we also need to do is consider how this work can become more of interest to others. So one of the most obvious things is safety, which was brought up earlier. In this context, goal reasoning is suggesting that, gee, we give the responsibility to the agent to determine what it's going to be focusing on. That's very scary. So we want to constrain it in a way that makes sense, both to the individual as well as to the task that it's performing. We need to develop we don't even have a theory at that point in time for how this should be done. We need to work on that. We're beginning to encourage reproducibility. I'll get into ActorSim in just a moment to explain how it addresses this and to encourage the sharing of the obvious things that we would want to in regards to the studies that we're performing. There is interest in research. We do want interest research in particularly those who are pursuing some popular topics, such as the ones listed here. We've made some progress in some, but not in some others, such as the one listed. And we haven't yet held a workshop outside the USA, so we're interested in being able to do that and establish a goal reasoning competition, focusing on something that would be very amenable to a goal reasoning technique. We'd also like to develop that killer app, and I'll provide one in a second. It's one in which that we expect goal reasoning would substantially outperform a non-goal reasoning agent because it has that capability to be able to relax the assumption that the goal is static. And some progress has been made, but we need one with broad interest. So first a note on ActorSim. It's a standardized implementation of goal reasoning that Mac Roberts, working with me as a postdoc right now, has developed. It provides links to simulators where agents interact in a dynamic environment through a series of connections, and also has implemented third-party planners, and allows you to be able to study the entirety of implementations in the goal lifecycle that Mac has defined. We've used it so far for studies of sub-goal selection and anomaly resolution, and Mac has recently put it online at this location. So I'll be happy to talk with you more about that. Kaiyan Gupta, who is the CEO of Nexus Research, a small company that is quite close to us in DC, is working on what might be a kind of killer app. He has got the attention of Navy sponsors to work on a very applied topic, which pertains to, control of a set of heterogeneous robots in the context of mine counter missions. mine counter missions pertain to trying to guide underwater vehicles to be able to ensure that safety is retained with respect to the operations of the vehicles in the area. So, in particular, he's looking at using unmanned vehicles and goal management autonomy in order to be able to generate, so that they can generate and manage their own goals in situations in which, again, the operator is not always going to be available to guide them at every point in time. Some of our own next steps are listed here. We've recently identified a notable event detection approach that's very distributed in nature, and we're going to be pushing forward with that with respect to some of our work. We have begun doing some in-water testing of our underwater vehicle, and expect to get further results on that. We have a small paper in the Goal Reasoning Workshop, which we discussed that. We're currently using a multi-agent Goal Reasoning system to guide and control the team of air and ground robots for disaster relief tasks, and are conducting some outdoor exercises with those robots within the next couple of months. We have a proposal for using Goal Reasoning to control a humanoid robot that's coming out pretty soon. ActorSim is continually being adapted by several people working with Mac Roberts. He's implementing a Goal Task Network Planner within it, and he has several other extensions and integrations that he's working in. Rebel Agents is becoming a more popular topic in our group. Alexandria Coleman has joined us. These, again, are agents that can refuse to pursue an operator provided command, which begs the question as to what types of human-machine teaming must take place, and what types of approaches are appropriate under different circumstances for them. We've got some work that we're planning to do in terms of decision response, very more deliberative approaches, such as those of information gathering or learning goals, as we call them, that we'll be pursuing. And further integrations with deep RL approaches as well as others. And integrations with cognitive models that we have not pursued as yet. So before I finish, just a quick advertisement. Thank you, Tarek, for mentioning the AAAI 17 Doctor Consortium. This is something which I'm co-chairing next February in particular at AAAI. It's a terrific opportunity for students to get a very warm and welcoming support from an assigned mentor and others who are in the meeting with them for a 2-day time period. There's a lot of funding that's provided to the students for that meeting, and I encourage them to, anyone who might be interested in attending that, to please contact me. I'd be happy to talk with them about it. So, my last slide. I've given you a snapshot of Goal Reasoning without going into detail, and you must be very frustrated by this, and I apologize, but the idea was to whet your appetite, to bring the topic to your attention, and hopefully be warned that if you find it interesting, you'll come and talk to the others. So, Goal Reasoning, I've defined it as the ability to dynamically prioritize one's goals, and typically this is very important in situations in which the environment is complex, where unpredicted situations can occur dynamically, either frequently, or they're critical, or they're problematic, or maybe opportunities take place that you want to take advantage of, in which you cannot pre-encode all possible responses ahead of time, or that the human user, or operator, as I'm calling is frequently inaccessible, and thus can't provide the guidance to you otherwise. So we've pursued, as well as others, many directions. We lack a lot of comparisons across approaches at this point in time. It's such a new area, and perhaps that's not too surprising. I've highlighted some research topics that demand further attention and recognize that there are others which I haven't brought to you. Okay, finally, we welcome a lot of collaborators. We've got about 7 or so right now this summer, and please contact me if you're interested. So, thank you. So, Tarek, I'm not sure.